What's going on, team? Welcome back to another Stock Talk. Welcome back to another week. So just when we thought the market might be turning around and heading to the downside, we just continue to see this thing keep heading up. So first things first, my name is Andrew with Fates Trading Academy. Today, what we'll do is we're going to be looking over the S&P 500. We'll be looking over the NASDAQ, and then we'll dive into some of the opportunities that we see coming up this week that you might want to add to your watch list so that you can be prepared. When the moves happen, you can be right there in the moment, ready to take action. So if you guys are excited about that, smash that like button. Definitely helps out the channel, helps out the algorithm. If you're not subscribed, we do this every single week. So make sure to subscribe and be the first one to see these opportunities heading your way. So let's dive into it. First thing we're going to do is take a look at the S&P 500. So we're looking at the SPY. I mean, we've been basically just trading in this channel that we've been talking about since basically November. We did come up here, I believe it was last week, and we did see a little bit of a push to the downside. However, we didn't go all the way down. We ended up finding some support, consolidating right up here, and then we're still making higher highs. We hit 418 just the other day. So we're basically, still trending above at this resistance level. So one thing I would say is it's just a time to be cautious. Don't get too overexcited just because it's continuously heading to the upside. We are at a resistance. We have historic patterns showing us what usually happens. Doesn't mean it's going to repeat itself. However, the likelihood is much higher that it will than it won't. So just keep that in mind when you're trading and pay attention to these patterns that we're seeing here. So we did end up, like I said, got a little bit of a pullback here. We did approach, this resistance level once again. So we'll see. This week is really going to be, a crucial week for sure. It can definitely still end this week at, at this resistance level before heading down, or we can just continue to trend up this resistance level for some time. So the point of this is more so for you to be prepared than surprised if anything does happen and it does turn around and start heading to the downside. Similarly, if we're going to be taking a look at the NASDAQ /NQ, we're essentially following a similar pattern here. We have been trending. We are trending once again at this resistance level here. And we are slightly breaking to the upside. However, we're not making any rash moves. So similar situation to what we saw in SPY. Just be cautious of that. So that's pretty much what's going on with the overall market. Now let's jump into some of the opportunities that we see this week, the ones that you should be paying attention to and probably most likely add to your watch list. That way you're prepared and ready. So the first one we're going to be taking a look at is going to be Apple, APPL. Or AAPL. So this one here, we're seeing earnings are coming up here on the 28th. This does still have some room before we hit the overbought territories. And we did, we have been trending. We did break above the EMA, so we are trending to the upside as of right now. We're also at a 60 on the RSI. We have plenty of room on the MACD to turn around and head to the upside. We do have previous highs up at 145, and the next resistance that we'd be watching would be 138, that 138 level. So we do have still some room. We have about, $4 before we hit that first resistance level that we're watching. However, depending on how things go, if the market continues the way it is, I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing heading to the upside. And that really also depends on how earnings go and what kind of data we see coming out during earnings. So I would really just hold off on this one until the 28th, just to see what happens. Because even with good earnings, sometimes the price actually heads to the downside. So what we want to do is we want to be reactive traders instead of trying to predict the market. We want to just see what the price is telling us, what the price action is telling us, and react to that and capitalize on that reaction. So this is one that I'm definitely watching this week. The next one's going to be BIG. So this is Big Lots. This one here, we did just break. We ended up bouncing on this SMA level here. And then we did end up just breaking above this EMA level. We do have plenty of room to run on the RSI. We do have previous highs at 72. We're currently at 67. So I would say, this is, a fairly decent setup here, especially once we got that bouncing confirmation here and a break of the EMA, along with the fact that we have plenty of room on the RSI, and the MACD is starting to look very good as well, as if it's going into a reversal. Definitely consider checking this one out and adding this one to your watch list. Fairly decent setup here. The next one's going to be UAL. So this one is United Airlines. So this one actually ended up being, I believe it was not even 19. If we're looking at the fundamentals, flights, the bookings for the flights are 19% up higher to Europe, because the EU said it will reopen travel for vaccinated Americans, meaning more people are booking more flights. So obviously, more income for the company. Obviously, the share price is going to be going up as well. This one we are, definitely one to pay attention to, I would say. We ended up bouncing on the support that we had back here, back in the beginning of last month, and actually, at the end of last month as well. We ended up finding support here as well, just recently, about a week ago, and then we ended up breaking EMA on Friday, and still heading to the upside today. Earnings, obviously, even though the numbers probably aren't the best, it's starting to go up just because people are attempting to predict the market once again and predict the sector as well. So we're seeing the fact that, prices are starting to head up per share. Historically, we're looking at 63.7 as recent highs, the most recent highs. So, with this, what we're going to be watching really is this $56 level. That's where the SMA crosses with the price. And so if we do end up breaking above that, that's when most likely, it could be of interest. However, until then, it's a bit of a riskier play. However, definitely one to pay attention to, because if flights do begin to, increase and bookings begin to increase, we'll obviously see an increase in share price. So definitely pay attention to kind of what's happening with airline stocks and airlines. And as far as, the restrictions that we're facing right now. So if we are facing, substantial restrictions, obviously the prices will go down. If, obviously things are starting to open up, people are starting to book, the price will go up. So that's just the most recent news that we saw fundamentally. From a technical standpoint, like I said, we did find support and ended up bouncing here. We are, crossing the EMA. We have crossed the EMA. We have gotten confirmation of that. We also have plenty of room to run on the EM or RSI and the MACD. We are starting to see a change of color, but we should definitely, like I said, it's just more of the fact that we should be paying attention to this more on a day-to-day basis. With airlines, it's a bit difficult to predict, especially in these times. So this is just one to add to your watch list and pay attention to. Maybe get in and out within a day, but I wouldn't risk holding it too long, just because things change so quickly. You wouldn't know, before next thing you know, this price is either finding new support all the way down here at 39, or it could be heading to the upside. So more of a day-to-day kind of play on this one. The next one that we're going to be looking at is going to be INTC. So this is obviously Intel. We're paying attention to this one. This one is looking like a fairly great setup. We ended up seeing a huge pullback right here after earnings. Last earnings, we saw the same thing happen here. We pulled back, and the earnings before that, we saw the same thing happen. Once again, we ended up pulling back. However, after each earnings and after each time we pulled back, we did end up recovering, making higher highs after that. Pulled back, recovered, pulled back. We're assuming that we will be recovering. The one thing that is interesting about this one, we do have support down here from a technical standpoint around 56, so pay attention to that. We are very oversold, so definitely pay attention to the fact that we are oversold. However, we could still find support at this $56 level. Once we see a cross here on the MACD, we are facing, the semi shortage, and that's a bit of an issue. However, one thing I wanted to bring to your guys' attention is the fact that if we look at AMD, so Intel, AMD, NVDA, in AMD has actually been heading up to the upside. We did see, during earnings is actually tomorrow, so we'll see what happens. However, we did end up seeing a nice push to the upside here on AMD, so that should say something. Just if we're comparing, similar stocks, the next one is NVDA. Also saw a nice push just recently. We don't have earnings on this one coming up, but we did see a nice push. So, Intel might just be an opportunity here. Definitely one that's interesting to pay attention to. INTC. Definitely interesting to pay attention to, especially with this pattern playing out that we consistently keep seeing, the other stocks pushing to the upside. So, and the setup, being there, it might just be a good time to add this to your watch list and follow up with this a little bit later once we see a break of the EMA, potential head to the upside. So definitely an interesting one to pay attention to. The next one is going to be DOCU, DOCU. This is more of a longer term kind of a play. We are a bit overbought. However, if we're looking at the grand scheme of things, we were trading in this channel here. We did drop down. We found a bottom here and support once again right over here. So let's add those supports to this point. We did find support here, found support here, and now we're actually right up here at this resistance level. Actually, we ended up breaking this resistance level that we've been facing for some time now. So we did end up breaking it. We came back down, found support on that resistance level. Now it became a support, and now we're heading back up to the upside. So the next thing that we're probably going to be paying attention to, in my opinion, would be this level right here, 245. We did break the SMA, so that's a good sign. We are trending above the EMA. Like I said, the one thing is we are a bit overbought, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a bit of a pullback. But if we're looking at the longer term picture of DocuSign, this is definitely one to consider, maybe just finding or adding to your watch list and getting in on this once there's a nice pullback. This one's still a little overbought. I'd probably be patient to get into this one, but definitely one to be adding to your radar, adding to your watch list. The next one's going to be BAC. This one's just been consistently trending to the upside. This is, I don't know, this is just the one of those that you just consistently see it heading higher. We ended up seeing a bit of a pullback here in the recent week. And then we ended up finding support on this SMA line, which we consistently keep doing if we're looking at historic patterns. So, we ended up finding support. It looks like we're bouncing. We're trending above the EMA. We do have some decent room here on the RSI before we head up to, overbought territories. So definitely one to pay attention to at 39. Last highs were at 40.99, so about 41. So you got about $1.50 of wiggle room here. But if we're, like I said, if we're paying attention to the pattern here, we've just consistently been trending to the upside, to the upside, to the upside, to the upside. So definitely one to pay attention to, possibly add to your watch list. And if you see value in it, definitely check it out. The next one's going to be LMND. This one we've been keeping an eye on for some time. Still one that I'm very interested in. The reason for this right now is the fact that we are breaking through this SMA line. Once we break through this SMA line, it then becomes our support. Once we break through that support, most likely we'll be breaking through this resistance as well, right over here at 139, $100.39. So once we break through that, if we find support at this level, we are fairly overbought, so we could possibly sell off still. However, we have been holding the support that we established back in December. We've been holding it in December. We held it back March, and then we ended up holding it in April. And then we've been pretty much trending on this April support level this entire time. And now we just saw this break to the upside. So one to add to your watch list, we have earnings coming up on the 11th of May. So that could be either a positive or a negative catalyst. Definitely one that has decent opportunity. We're currently sitting at 97.56 with all-time highs at 188.3. And like I said, with the support, this has been a fairly strong support here for some time now, basically almost 5 months. So, not to say that it can't break lower. However, 5 months of holding the same support is, it's grounds for being a strong support. So regardless, this would be a deal if this is a good buy right now. However, like I said, we are a bit overbought, so I'd give it maybe a day or two, see what happens if it pulls back a little bit. Definitely keep an eye on this one, and keep an eye on the fundamentals on this as well. The next one that we're going to be paying attention to is going to be Netflix, NFLX. So Netflix, strong pullback here. When we had earnings coming out, I believe they missed their targets. So we saw a huge pullback here. That's not surprising. We have seen these dramatic moves here on Netflix for, a very long time here. So we obviously have resistance levels right up here, which we were at that level. And then we have support levels. Well, the support levels have been really trending a bit. The low lows have been trending a bit to the upside. So we have a bit of a support here and a resistance right up there. So we've been just kind of bouncing around in this channel here this whole time. We did drop to this support level here. So that being said, we are at basically a support level, just a little over the support level, support being around 490. We're about 509. And we are on the verge of breaking this EMA. So if we do break the EMA, that might be a good sign to jump in or pay attention to this one. We might make a little bit of a move to the upside, maybe to the SMA, get rejected there, come back down. However, just pay attention to kind of the price action and make sure you get confirmation on the EMA before jumping in. This is pretty much, a fairly decent deal considering we were just at 560. So about $60 a share to the upside with support. We're basically at support since September. If we're just following that support trend. So definitely a kind of a steal deal here on Netflix. Might take a little bit of time to play out. However, for sure, as far as, are you getting a deal on it? In my opinion, you're getting a fairly great deal here. So the next one that we're going to be paying attention to is CHGG. This one, we are breaking the SMA, so that's why this one caught my attention. We do have some room to run on the RSI, and it looks like we are looking good on the MACD. We do have earnings coming up on the 3rd, so pay attention to that. I'd probably pay attention to the earnings first. You guys know the drill. I don't really try to get into anything before earnings. I want to wait for after earnings come out and see what happens with the price action, and then I'll react to that. So just going to keep an eye on this one. If it breaks the SMA, might be a good opportunity, especially if we have earnings that support that with the price action. We are, like I said, a little bit overbought on this one, so you're not getting the best deal possible. The best deal was probably down here at 81. But, considering we were at 115 back in February, and we're currently at 90, you have about, $25 per share to the upside. Downside, we're looking at about a risk of, to the latest support, we're looking about 13%. So 13% to the downside with potential of 16%. That's not the best deal, but definitely one to pay attention to right after earnings. Just kind of see what happens with that one. Add it to your watch list for sure. The next one's going to be ORCL. This one actually had a fairly decent setup here. We ended up seeing a nice pullback here of about, I think it was about 10% approximately. So, we are oversold here on the RSI. MACD starting to curl. It looks like we are potentially going into a reversal. We want to see a break of the EMA before jumping into this. So from the EMA back to recent highs, we're looking at about 5%, 6%, which isn't bad, considering Oracle has been doing fairly well throughout this entire time, since pretty much September of last year. So definitely want to consider. That pullback is definitely a great opportunity. The next one's going to be BABA. This is another one that's a bit of a longer term play. We have been watching this for some time now. We did make a nice push to the upside here in February since this last pullback. And then we ended up pulling back, and we've been just kind of trending at that same support that we were at before we'd made that push to the upside back in January. So we're just trending here, treading along the support, still at the support. Looks like we are breaking a little bit to the upside. The one thing that I am paying attention to is we are breaking above the SMA, and we're also holding above the EMA. We do have plenty of room on the RSI. We're at about 50, and the MACD, obviously, we have plenty of room on that as well. So even if we head back to the recent highs that we just had, we're looking at about 14%, 15%. All-time highs, we're looking at about 27%. And then our risk is fairly small. We're looking at about 3% to previous support, which was at about 220, 225. And you can even up the risk to maybe 9%, so 2-to-1 risk. So about if we're looking to recent highs, we're looking about 15%, and so to lows we're looking about 8. So that's a 2-to-1. If we're looking at all-time highs, that risk reward ratio just becomes even better. However, like I said, we've just been holding the support for a very long time. If you don't know what Alibaba is, this company has done very well for itself, and I see this thing doing fairly well in the future. So I'm not saying that this is something that's going to blow up to 319 in the next week. However, this is definitely going to perform very well over the next longer term period, in my opinion. So at getting this at these price levels while it's still just consolidating, definitely not going to make a nice push. But if you're looking to look into something that's longer term, that will perform, this is definitely a company to pay attention to. Like I said, we've been paying attention to this for a very long time, basically since this dip down. We caught this move to the upside, exited up here, and then we haven't really re-entered since, just because we haven't seen anything significant. However, if you're trying to, like I said, add this more so to your longer term play, longer term portfolio, this is definitely one to pay attention to. The next one's going to be Walmart, WMT. Saw a nice pullback here. We ended up finding support down here at 129, ended up pushing up to the upside. We do have earnings coming up on the 18th of May. This has been pulling back. So watching this here, we are at this current support level. However, we'll see if this holds. It ended up breaking the support level here before, so we'll see if this ends up pulling back. We are fairly on, more so on the oversold side, so we could possibly see a potential bounce, if not at this support, maybe at this SMA line. But until then, really, it's just a matter of just kind of waiting for this thing to cool off and settle and consolidate before we start thinking about maybe possibly jumping into this for the upside. So definitely one to add to your radar for sure. The pullback that we're seeing even now is fairly decent. And from previous highs, we're looking at, 157. We're about 137 right now. So $20 a share. If not, we're recent highs, we're looking at about 147. So even $10 a share to the most recent ones that we're seeing here. So one to add to your watch list for sure and pay attention to. The next one's going to be FSLY. So this one here, we actually have seen a break of the SMA, a break of the EMA. We are approaching more so of the overbought territory. However, we do have earnings coming up on the 5th. Once again, this is another one to keep an eye on this week. Add it to your watch list and wait for earnings to come out before you make a decision. At least that's the strategy and approach that I take. And it seems it has been working out fairly well. So I believe that, it's probably a better approach, to each their own. However, that's what I do, and that's what I could recommend. So that's what I do. So definitely I would wait until the 5th to see what happens with this one. However, for the first time in 2 months, we're seeing a break of the SMA. And then once we see what happens with earnings, we are at this support level here that we've been trending at, also held that support back in November as well. So we'll see what happens with this break of the SMA. That's a bit of a game changer. We'll see what happens with earnings. That's just what I'm watching with FSLY. Add that to your watch list for sure. The next one's going to be DKNG. DKNG. So this one here, we did end up breaking above the EMA. We are starting to trend to the upside. Once again, earnings are coming up on the 7th. This could continue to trend to the upside before we hit the overbought territory, before earnings even. So definitely one to pay attention to. One thing I would say is we are below the SMA, so be careful. We might get rejected with that if you do decide that this is of value right now. Once again, another thing I'm doing with this is just paying attention and waiting for the earnings to come out, and be more of a reactive trader than try to predict what's going to happen. So the next one is going to be Facebook. This one here has gotten a fairly good deal, I would say. This had a nice pullback from 316 all the way down to 298. 298. Now we just saw a break to the upside here above the EMA. We are trending the SMA lines heading to the upside. We have earnings coming up on the 28th. Something like Facebook, though, obviously anything can happen. But this is obviously, we're starting to see a nice strong push to the upside. We have plenty of room to run on the RSI, and the MACD is looking very strong. So we'll see what happens. We do have a resistance right up here at about 305. And we are currently at 303. So really tomorrow might even be the day that really tells us all what we got to really know. I wouldn't be surprised to see this head to the upside. However, like I said, with earnings coming up on the 28th, which is in 2 days, you could be a little bit more patient, a little bit more safe, and wait for that to come out and then react to that once again. That really just depends on you, how strongly you believe in Facebook, how strongly or how much value you see in Facebook and at the price point that it's currently at. So the next one that we're going to be looking at is going to be Square SQ. This one here, we're starting to see a push to the upside. Not too much action here. However, we have been trading between, this channel here that we have been forming. So definitely something to consider and pay attention to. We didn't quite make it up to the top of this channel in the last 2 little pushes up that we saw. We did see rejections here, which was what we are approaching right now. However, we do have plenty of room to run before we hit overbought territories. Once again, earnings are coming up. A lot of earnings coming up this week and next week. So, stay patient. Sometimes, sitting on your hands might just, be the better option for you, and just stay patient. But as of right now, it's starting to head to the upside. We do have potential here. If we have strong earnings come up, I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing push higher highs. But definitely pay attention to this. We are seeing unusual option interest in this one. At 257 calls. So pay attention to kind of what's happening a day-to-day basis with this one. It's not the best setup. It's not something like Facebook where I feel a little bit more confident about that setup than this one. However, it is starting to make higher highs. We are starting to break above the EMA. It's definitely one to consider. Absolutely one to add to your watch list. If not for this week, definitely long-term for sure. The next one is going to be Gopro. This one, I believe, had a great setup. We ended up seeing a nice pullback here, ended up finding support at this SMA line, and we are starting to push to the upside once again. If we're looking at current price to the recent highs, not even all-time highs, we're looking about 12% here. All-time highs, we're looking about 17%. And we have been finding support. However, don't forget, I'd probably manage my risk around 1072 since that has been a support since basically last month, end of last month, and this month as well. So that has been a support down here at 1077. So anything below that, I'd probably manage my risk. That's also where the SMA line is as well. So if it breaks both of these levels, it's probably not a good sign. So pay attention to that. We are looking fairly good on the RSI and the MACD as well. Earnings, once again, we have earnings coming up on the 6th. Pay attention, guys. Pay attention to what happens on earnings. I would encourage you guys to really just maybe this time around, just see what happens when earnings come out. If you're not invested or if you're not trading, just pay attention to what happens when earnings come out, and just see what happens to the price, and just study that on each of the stocks that we talked about that have earnings coming up, and just see how it reacts. And then you will have a little bit of a better understanding as to why sometimes maybe it's a better idea to wait after earnings to make a decision, rather than trying to predict what might happen, and then potentially being wrong. So nobody can predict anything, but you can definitely react to everything. So that's kind of how you want to approach it. With this one, definitely a great setup. I'm very interested in GoPro right here with this opportunity here. The risk that you'd be managing, you're managing, around 4%, 3-4%, with the profit potential of possibly 14 to 17%. So definitely an interesting one to pay attention to. The next one that we're going to be taking a look at is going to be NNOX. So this one here, the reason this one ended up on the watch list for this week is we are announcing first quarter 2021 financials here on May 11th. So definitely want to pay attention to, I would say more so on the 11th than now, but definitely add it to your watch list so that you're ready. Maybe set your alerts as well so that you're ready when this thing either continues lower lows, or if this thing starts breaking up to the upside and breaks maybe the SMA, that might be, a time where you're like, okay, this is something that I want to pay attention to and maybe get into. So definitely want to pay attention to this. With 95 as the latest highs and we're sitting at 33, I would definitely say it's worth your time to follow up with this a little bit later, when it's on your watch list, especially after we see what the financials say. So the next one is going to be Discovery, DISCA. Had a nice huge pullback here. We have been trending down here, and we're currently sitting at 38.85. And we do have earnings coming up on the 28th in 2 days. So it's going to be a bit of a big day. We'll see what happens with the price. It could push up, could push down. I'm managing my risk. Personally, I'm managing my risk here at 35, 34 area. So we'll see what happens if it breaks down to the downside. I'll definitely be protected in managing my risk. However, if it breaks to the upside, the next level I'd be watching is probably 52. And then after that, I wouldn't say we're heading to 79 that quick, but 52 would probably be the first level I'd be watching here at the SMA line. The next one that we're going to be paying attention to is going to be SKLZ, Skills. This one had a nice push. We have been trending down to the downside here for some time. Here is the channel that we were in. Let's go ahead and adjust that. Been trending in this downwards channel for some time, downwards wedge, and we ended up breaking out of this wedge right here. So we are starting to see a break of the SMA. However, we are a bit overbought and we do have earnings coming up. So just be cautious of that, be aware of that. But we are looking fairly good. A breakout is looking very, very nice. So definitely one to add to your watch list. And, if you see value in it, you already know what to do. The next one that we're going to be paying attention to is going to be PINS, which is Pinterest. Earnings coming up here on the 27th. We are here at the SMA line. We are above the EMA line. We do have some decent room to run before we hit overbought territories on the RSI. I wouldn't say anything crazy, expect anything crazy. However, maybe hitting back, to 85 recent highs. We're currently at 676, 85, about a $10 move maybe. But really, once again, it depends what happens with earnings. So with this one on earnings tomorrow, I'd be patient, watch what happens, and then decide from there. The next one is going to be Boeing BA. Boeing, similar to airline stocks, if travel's starting to improve, we're obviously going to see more of Boeing's, market share or price per share heading to the upside as airlines start picking up again. So definitely one to pay attention to. One, we have earnings once again. Earnings coming up on the 28th. A lot of earnings coming up here. So wait for earnings, especially on Boeing. I would wait on earnings and just see what happens. And then I would react to that. If it's going to be dropping, possibly short. If it's going to be heading to the upside, might be a good time to jump in. We still are below the SMA. So, we haven't broken that. We are above the EMA, but SMA is what I'm watching, which is that 248 level. And, I guess we'll really see what happens on the 28th if we end up breaking above this SMA level. If we do, it's probably a good sign. If we don't end up breaking to the upside above this SMA level, it's probably not the best sign. So that's pretty much it, guys, for this week. If you guys enjoyed this, make sure to smash that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys on next week's video.